Welcome, everyone. My name is Mark Gardner. I'm an alum of the Weitzman School and a member of the Board of Advisors. I'm thrilled to be here today to moderate this virtual talk. Thank you to everyone who's attending, who's out there. This talk will provide the Weitzman alumni community with an opportunity to hear from two of our prominent alums, Stuart Weitzman, Wharton 63, and Wendy Evans Joseph, College 77. They're going to discuss their careers and how designers successfully build creative networks with business clients. We do record these talks and have a webpage dedicated to the virtual talk series. The link can be added, should be added to the chat, where you can view all the recordings. For this event, so please use the Q&A function for questions for the speakers. And in the chat, please introduce yourself. Be sure to place it on all presenters and attendees. Please introduce yourself with your name, degree, year of graduation, and where you might be joining us from. This is a great way for everybody attending to see who is here. One small note, again, be sure to for your comments that you have on all presenters and attendees so everyone can see it. And you use the blue drop down to change who you're sending it to. Okay, so I'd like to invite our two guests to turn on their cameras to join us, Wendy and Stuart. If you could turn on your cameras, join me. And I want to give a run through their bios. Very, such successful careers. So, bear with me for a moment while I speak about all the great things that they've done throughout their careers. I'll start with Wendy Evans Joseph, who is the founder of Studio Joseph, and under her leadership, Studio Joseph has completed a diverse array of public, institutional, and cultural projects, including Penn's Larry Robbins House, the home of management and technology, a pedestrian bridge for the Rockefeller University, which is absolutely gorgeous, a highly acclaimed pavilion in the Webb Chapel Park in Dallas. Her passion for art and museum culture and public education has led to a strong commitment to exhibition installations and community engagement projects. A part of the belief in interdisciplinary thinking. Studio Joseph works in graphic design, media, technology, industrial design, lighting design to create totally immersive environments for shared learning. Before founding Studio Joseph, Wendy had a distinguished 12-year career at Pay Cobb Freed and Partners. She is a licensed architect holding NCARB certification and is a lead accredited professional. Joseph received a Rome Prize in Architecture from the American Academy of Rome, a fellow of the American Institute of Architects, and is an academician of the National Academy of Design. As an active participant in professional leadership, she was the president of the New York chapter of the American Institute of Architects, chairman of the AIA National Committee of Design, and president of the Architectural League of New York. She also currently is president of the National Academy and a board member of the American Ballet Theater and Second Stage Theater and the City Has Living Laboratory. Joseph holds a BA from the University of Pennsylvania, summa cum laude, and a Master in Architecture from Harvard Graduate School of Design. She was on the Weitzman Board of Advisors from 1992 to 2007, serving as the chair of the board for almost a decade. She was also a member of the University of Pennsylvania Board of Trustees. Stuart Weitzman built a footwear company. That sounds like an understatement. Stuart Weitzman into one of the world's most renowned fashion footwear brands. Weitzman's passion for design has been a lifelong pursuit as he began working in his father's Massachusetts shoe factory while still in college. After graduating from the Wharton School, Weitzman applied himself to the industry with laser-like focus, eventually building a globally renowned company that bears his name. In 2015, he orchestrated the sale of Stuart Weitzman LLC to Coach, which was renamed Tapestry in October 2017 to reflect its multi-brand identity. Weitzman stayed on as the creative director for the company through May of 2017, at which time he became chairman emeritus. Since stepping down from his active role in the business, Weitzman has pursued a myriad of interests. He is a sought-after lecturer at universities around the world. He also mentors the many students who seek his counsel on starting their own businesses. He is currently supporting the development of a museum in Madrid, Spain, dedicated to Spanish Jewish history. He co-produced 2 plays, one that opened on Broadway in 2019, and the other is expected to open in London in 2021. As a member of the board of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Foundation, he also contributes to the success of the aspiring Olympic athletes and has been one himself by representing the United States in table tennis at the Maccabee Olympic Games. In February of 2019, Penn named its School of Design in honor of Weitzman in recognition of both his ongoing philanthropic support of the university and his active engagement in academic activities. He currently is a member of the school's board of advisors and teaches an entrepreneur in residence class regularly at the school. Welcome to you both. Let's get things going. So if you'll turn on your mics, yes. So just as a reminder to everyone, today's discussion is going to be about Wendy and Stuart's careers and how designers, for the alums out there, how designers build successful creative networks with business clients. So I'll start with you, Wendy. You've had an amazing career of cultural work, noting the work with Paycobb Freed for 12 years. What led to the start of your own practice?
Oh boy, thank you, Mark. Anyway, thank you all for being here today. And I just also want to say thank you again to Stuart, as you mentioned, Mark, not only for your great generosity to the school, and I mean, your gift really makes so much more possible for students and faculty. It gives all of us greater potential for design for our community. So Mark, you asked about practice. At Paycobb Freed, I loved working on large, complex urban projects, grand public structures, high rises, and I learned a lot technically. I learned how to make buildings happen, about the process of design, and to value the collaboration with engineers and other consultants. But when I worked on the Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC, it was all about the client's vision, their driving force to remember their suffering. And I wanted to make a building that would be more than just the program, the site, a building that would be visceral and difficult, but also hopeful. And so when the museum opened, I knew I couldn't go back to skyscrapers and corporate practice. For me, architecture is going to be a different kind of a journey, a more personal journey, and that the only way to do that would be a smaller studio. That a smaller studio would allow me to maintain the idea of meaning behind a project. And so for the past 20 years, Studio Joseph has never been more than a dozen designers, and it's been that kind of a journey.
Mark, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to do that. I do that all the time, part of the Zoom world. But Stuart, if you could tell us about getting your company started and what were some of the early opportunities that led you on your journey?
Well, I actually noticed there are a bunch of people on this call today who go back with me many years. I thank you for joining me. And also even a student who I think has gone to 5 or 6 of my classes. So he probably can answer the question as well as I can. I was this, a young guy taking some shoe designs and trying to sell them to the biggest stores in America with brands that had been around for 30 to 100 years, had all their shelf space allocated to them. And there was no real room for me to find a home in any of these stores. So I recognized that I needed to create a niche. And unless I could create that niche, I would always be chasing the big guys. I noticed that at red carpet events, none of the ladies ever wore the same dress. We kind of joked that that would be World War III if that happened. But you could find 5 to 10 of them wearing the same shoe. And it didn't seem to bother them, but that was the case. And I thought, whoa, if I can create one-of-a-kind shoes for these actresses, maybe their stylists will come to me and maybe they'll wear what I'm creating, and maybe we'll get known and associated with some of the coolest people on the planet. So I set up a little factory. By the way, that was not something I learned at Wharton. Imagine putting up a lot of capital to make a product that nobody's going to pay for. That's not very good business in a sense. But I had another goal in mind, of course, and that was to create my niche. And I got lucky. I did call a stylist, the first one I called, to tell her what I was doing. And if she had a client, think of me. And she called me back and said, I've just signed up Aretha Franklin. And if you can give her something special that goes with her dress, we won't go into stores and try to find a shoe like everyone else does. And she'll have her own pair of shoes. And I sent some sketches. They picked one out. I married it to the design of the dress in a tasteful way. And I said to and she ordered a pair. And I said to the stylist, this is a one-off custom shoe that I'm making. I'm not suggesting that this is my favor to you, because obviously I'm doing this from a business standpoint. But if Aretha, when she is asked on the red carpet, whose dress are you wearing? Because they're going to ask her about her dress. Or who did your hair? They'll ask her about her hair, but they're not going to ask her about her shoes. They just don't. Maybe she could say something nice like, oh, and by the way, my shoes are by Stuart Weitzman. And the stylist said, oh, I can't promise you anything. We'll see what we can do. So if we pull up picture number 2, this is what I mean when I say I got lucky. Of course, if you don't buy the lottery ticket, you can't win the lottery. And I bought the ticket. So there's Aretha. She had, to our good fortune, she won the Grammy in 1983. And she's carrying it in her left hand, and she thanked everybody who she was supposed to, songwriter, family, agent, etc. And then she took off her shoes, held them up as you see, and added, and I also want to thank Stuart Weitzman for making me these beautiful and oh so comfortable shoes. Well, I'm going to give you a little arithmetic to think about. 23 million people heard her say that. And I was an upstart company. And I don't think 50 of those 23 million knew who we were until she spoke on my behalf. Within about 6 weeks, every stylist in Hollywood was calling me for shoes. And that's how I started the company.
Wow, that is amazing. That's amazing. I mean,
sure
you can't get a better endorsement than that.
No,
I mean,
no, she became an influencer before there was such a thing as influencers.
Yeah. It's so for both of you, I just this I'm going to ask a couple of questions just around your, in this way, Stuart, you described your creative relationship. So this first one's to Wendy. How, basically sort of getting at what we're talking about here, how do this is going to be an easy question. How do architects and clients develop working relationships, and who have been some of your best clients, and why?
I wish Aretha Franklin was my client.
I know, right?
Oh my
Yes,
God.
please.
She's the ideal client. Oh, that's such a fantastic thing. And I love the way those shoes were also beautiful and they were comfy,
Yeah, she said that to an oh so comfortable also. That was great.
Oh, so comfy. I think that's it. I mean, I think that's what we're always hoping somebody say, oh, it looks spectacular, but never mind that it works so well. I never enjoyed life so much as, but yeah, architecture, boy. So think about the process. You're the client, you have a need, you have a vision, you've got resources. Maybe not all of my clients have resources, but they have resources and they want to make something new. They want to find something that they don't have and begin a journey. And that journey, while it has a budget and a schedule, they don't know where they're going and they want to partner with someone. So the favorite clients are the people who you want to get in a car and take a road trip with. You want to have an adventure. Favorite clients, it's sort of like a Kerouac idea. They're filled with conversation and sharing, and importantly, there's a sense of trust. And so I think that trust is part of that relationship. And for me, it's about that honesty in working things through. My favorite clients inspire the favorite projects. The two are inextricably linked.
Fantastic. And Stuart, so you've had experience from the client side, working with architects, and you had a very unique opportunity collaborating with the late Zaha Hadid. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, making these shoes for celebrities was so successful that I realized you can't do it alone. And I don't just mean your internal team. You just can't do it alone. And I had a great experience with help from the celebrity world. I love I read a book when I was at Penn that a friend gave me who was studying, he was in engineering, and he wanted me to read this book on Isaac Newton. I thought, I don't know anything about gravity. What am I going to waste my, no, he said, it's about his life and the way he thinks. I think you'll love it. What I got out of that book, I think it was chapter 3, the headline of that chapter was, if I've gone farther than others, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of champions. And that thought was in my head from the day I graduated Penn. And I have tried to stand on the shoulders of champions. And who was a champion that I thought could redesign the retail industry? It was Zaha Hadid. Now, Zaha Hadid, was making these amazing buildings and museums, et cetera, and she's not interested in the shoe store. I have to tell you, I don't know how many phone calls I made, and I was so ridiculously persistent that I said, listen, I only need 15 minutes. So they gave it to me, and I went to her offices in London. And she had a sourpuss on because she didn't have any inclination to design shoe stores, I can tell you that. And I walked in and she said, all right, you got your 15 minutes. I said, well, actually, Miss Hadid, I don't need 15 minutes. I only need 5 minutes. Well, her frown turned into a smile. She was happy to be getting out of there sooner than she thought. And I said, my only question, which is why I only need 5 minutes, is why did you build that amazing new museum in Rome so modern, so elegant, so cool, in a city that has more museums than it can fill. And she said, you know, art has been changing continually. And I thought it's about time in a city like Rome that there's a building for these new types of art. And I said to her, do you know what shoes looked like 50 years ago? But they're in the same ridiculous shoe stores that were built then, even though the shoes have moved forward and advanced tremendously from a comfort and an aesthetic standpoint. And she smiled and said, I see where you're going. All right. I'll do 6 stores, but I have to approve the cities. Of course, I couldn't get into the malls in those cities without her design. So she wasn't threatening me. She was helping me by wanting to have that role. And the curvy nature of her lines, the flowing shelving and seating is just like what a sexy shoe wants to be. And there was no other architect who was known for that kind of attitude. She was it. Everything else would have been like, you know, any other retail architect, of which there are some great ones, you know, and they keep building. But we used her, and she did something quite special. In fact, if you pull up number 16, there it is. So there's the store she built for us in Hong Kong, center called the IFC Center. I know there is no one on this call who's ever seen a retail store like that. Shoes or not shoes, you have never seen anything like that. And the beauty of this is that it works also. She was so clever. She asked me, what do you want to accomplish? I said, I don't want to look like every shoe store. I want to have the sexy attitude of our product. And I want to be able to sell all the time, not just when women walk around and pick a shoe off the shelf, send the salesman in the back, and then sit down on a sofa for 4 or 5 minutes till the shoes come out and she's bored or talking to her friend or sending an email, and we've lost her. I'd like to be able to sell her while she's waiting. And so she built these wonderful designed units within the seating structure, and women would pick up another shoe after the salesman had gone to the back room and then asked for that as well. Our sales per customer went from 1.4 to 2.1. And I believe it's because of the way she put the product within the home of the people where they were sitting. So she wasn't just a great architect. She figured it out from a business standpoint. She's a woman, she loved shoes. She said she had about 500 pair. No one had to tell her, you know, about the boring nature of waiting for a pair of shoes to be brought out. And she solved it. And I'll tell you about this mall, which is the reason, of course, that we sought her out. In Asia, this is the mall, the most prestigious mall in all of Asia. If you can get in the IFC Center mall, you can get in any mall you want. And I couldn't get in that mall. I was turned down 3 times, and it was always the same reason, you know, shoes, what do they do? We have Hermes and Cartier and Ford, and we're not looking for, you know, medium price products like shoes. And then this man who runs it was in Milan. The manager gave him my cell phone. He called me from the store in Milan, which is a duplicate of this. And he said, this is so-and-so. I said, oh yes, I know you, you've turned me down. He said, I'll tell you what, you build me a store like I'm standing in here in Milan, and I'll give you the best location in our mall. I couldn't do that, but she did that. Talk about standing on the shoulders of giants. And as you can notice, the escalator is right off our store. So yes, they did give me the best location. And to this very day, when new tenants are approved to go into that mall, there is a caveat that this man gives them. If you don't present to me a design that excites me the way Weitzman's store does, I'm not going to sign the lease. So that's how it happened.
Wow. Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah.
It's really sort of a part of how you start to build a brand and build that reputation, how people start to understand culturally who you are. So, to both of you, and Wendy, I'll start. So how have the collaborations with clients influenced your design thinking?
Are you talking to me or when?
To Wendy.
Okay.
Yeah, but Stuart, I really love that story. And
Yeah.
I think that what it is that it is true that our favorite clients, and even Zaha would say, the favorite clients are really the ones with the highest expectations. And your expectations from her were not just, design something beautiful. She managed to go beyond that and design something that also had some reference to the shoes, yes. But I think she also went beyond that, as you're pointing out, to make a place that made sense from a business point of view. So it was this like huge confluence of everything that you were looking at. And ultimately it became the spirit of the place. And I think that
it's sort of true.
You inspired that spirit, that underlying message. And that's what draws people in. It's the design, but the design coupled with, what you gave it, that come from the heart idea about the passion that you have for what's in the store too. I think that's really nice. And, it doesn't happen all that often that you get that mesh, between the two. I will tell you that I'll give you my one example from my past. And I have to say, it's really hard when people ask, like, who's your favorite client, your best collaboration, this and that. It's like your children. Like, I love all my children. It's like everybody.
Yeah, don't ask me to pick my favorite shoe. Impossible.
Right.
That was one of our questions for later. Yeah, I have had some clients that I've had the fortune to work with on numerous occasions. And so maybe like your relationship with Zaha, you get into a good relationship and you keep that going and you're able to explore different paths. I work with the Museum of the City of New York and I'm still working with them. We did maybe 10, 12 projects over the years, but somewhere in that, the director of the museum called me and she said, come over here, we got to talk. And we stood there in the main lobby of the museum. It's an old historic building. It was been recently renovated. And she says, Wendy, this place is nice. It works, it's renovated. It has some gravitas, but it completely lacks soul. There's no hearth. There's no place here. There's nothing that brings pleasure or inspiration. It needs a soul. And I said, that's it, right? That's the program. That's what you want. And she said, yeah, come up with something, in other words, there wasn't even a program. There was just this idea of what it means to find a soul for a place. And what came out of that was a light sculpture. Now, I'm an architect and I love nibbling at the edges of our profession, at all the borders, dabbling, as Mark mentioned before, into other areas of design. And I thought, well, what we really need here is that hearth, is that feeling of the campfire, of gathering around, is the soul. That's where we'll find the soul. So we call this light sculpture Starlight. And somebody can bring up a picture of it. And what it is it's a place in that center hall that became a kind of the attraction. It became a place that is linked to it and sort of inspires you. It inspires you to walk up this gracious historic stair, inspires you to sit there. For some reason, it's also inspired people to get married under the Starlight sculpture. It became this sort of strange chuppah. It is a place where people take selfies, and it has its own Instagram site. And what it is it is something that embodies a little bit more about the place. And I think that click between place and the people comes about only through that collaboration with leadership or with the client. And so that is my similar story, and it's sort of, you know, it has a life beyond itself.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that's absolutely, yeah, I've seen, that's an absolutely gorgeous light installation, Wendy, that it's and you get at something there too that starts to talk about like sometimes there are words that we don't, I don't know, that we don't like maybe use in architecture, or that there's a sense having, we talk about it as having maybe a sense of place, but there's like the spirit of a place, the sense of enchantment, the sense of like, you know, taking you to somewhere that you didn't know you could sort of go to. I think you know, in that way, and shared in the same way that Zaha, like it's not just another, you know, another shoe store, another installation. It's, you know, it doesn't, it takes you to another place. And also in doing so, it creates such a unique identity for the place and a unique identity for the brand. And maybe Stuart, you could talk a little more about that in terms of your brand identity and what some of these collaborations have kind of have meant for, you know, what you glean from that, what your company, you know, what helped build your identity.
Well, Zaha and Aretha, and there were dozens of things like that that I pursued throughout my career. I never thought that would change the brand identity, but rather increase the brand awareness and recognition. Yeah, of course, if you're making shoes for Jennifer Aniston, and there's these millions of little girls there who think she's the greatest thing ever since, Brad Pitt dumped her, of course it's going to make us cool. But it was always, I don't know, it was like standing on their shoulders. How the heck was I going to get to those 16 to 25-year-old kids? I mean, you could try it your whole life and get there. And then you're not there forever because someone else comes along. So I used these collaborations. They, of course, never saw it as collaboration. They just thought it was their business deal. But we got so much more out of it. I mean, so much more out of than a check to get their time for a day or two. And it always worked. Honestly, it always worked. And it got me out of one of the big problems I had in my company. I wasn't even, when you have a problem and you don't know it, that is a problem. And I didn't know it. And thanks to finding the people who could help me out of it, that was my solution. So I never stopped doing that. I love that song, by Three Dog Night. One is the loneliest number you'll ever know. You don't want to be one. You want to have people around you, people with you, people who love you and will give their heart, not just work for a paycheck. And if you have that, it's like you've expanded your team without even having them on your actual team. So that's what we did.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for that. Let me just take a moment to say for those attending that, we have a few more questions here, but we want to open up to questions from you. So please use the Q&A function for questions for the speakers. And do feel free to, we'll be getting to those in a little bit as our time is starting to get down. So we want to make sure we get to as many as possible. So do start to place those in. So one of the things as we're sort of winding down with our questions in the conversation to you both, I thought this was a little bit of a, tough question about the challenges that you've both faced. So to both of you, you know, what would you say has been your biggest challenge in your business careers, and you know, where did you find yourself at the end of that challenge?
I guess I'll start. Yeah, the big challenge in my business career is the career of business. Sort of
Right.
thinking about architecture as a business, and
Right.
that there is no end in sight there. It's just a wander in the woods, and more challenges in that respect. But the other part of it is something that Stuart actually just brought up, which is that architecture is not a solo sport. To your Olympic beginning, it is definitely a team sport. And so what is very challenging is to find designers to work with who share my vision, who have passion, talent, and who also embody the same kind of like high ethical commitment to what we're doing, to understand like why we're doing what we're doing again, and not just what we're doing. So for the past years, I've been working with Monica Coughlin, who's the director of design in my studio, and she's a great partner with me. So we can bounce off ideas. A lot of design is, the challenge of design is there are bad ideas and good ideas, and they all blur together at the beginning. You have to have that ongoing conversation that brings out the most emotional work. And there's Jose Luis Vidalon works with me as a designer, but what he brings to the table also is that he's a person of integrity, a person who the clients trust. And again, a team of people around you who trust each other, and who the client can trust to be honest and forthright, and that they know that we're always for them. And I will say also, since we're at Penn, and I want to be clear that design education for us in the practice is really important. And so we're always looking, at least I'm always looking, that's the challenge for great young, talented people to come and join the office, and to, you know, share their ideas with me, and to create, again, that kind of internal collaboration. There's actually a recent graduate, Alex Adamski, who was at Penn, who's working in Studio Joseph right now, and is a great example of this. It's that spirit that people bring at the early point of their career, that helps me through all of these challenges. So as Penn, thinking about Penn graduates, I say, thank you again, Stuart. Good job here in supporting this school. Thanks.
Stuart, would you, the challenges within, I know you've already sort of spoken about many, like that it's not maybe a single one, or how do I choose the challenge that is, that's been the highest hill to climb, but is there something you can offer us there?
Yeah, well, I did say I don't think there's a greater challenge than not knowing you're on the wrong track. If you know it, you're going to take as many steps as quickly as possible to redirect your path. But if you don't know it, and you just live in that complacency, and I encountered that, and it was by chance, you know. But you pay attention to all little things that you run into, and you never know when they really mean something. So I was at this wedding, and like most people do at a wedding, they put you with your friends, and there were four couples. We were all together. I knew them all, so, you know, it wasn't hello, I'm so and so or whatever. But I didn't know a daughter who was there. She was the daughter of one of my friends. So I reached across the table and said, "Hi, I'm Stuart Weitzman." And this kid who was, it turned out she was a Stanford student. She said, "Oh," she said, "I know who you are. My mother wears your shoes." Well, Wendy probably knows how that knife felt in my heart, because we designers want to be designing for the coolest part of society. And my mother wears your shoes. And she was absolutely right. I had started my company, and comfort and fit was always one of the three elements of our business, in addition to contemporary design. So I really found a home with professional women, lawyers, architects, professors, housewives, and we kind of promoted it that way. We didn't do a lot of advertising, hardly any, because we kept growing. And hey, I didn't realize that, I was missing out. But sure enough, this millennial consumer who had started to develop a decade before was taking over the fashion world. And I wasn't getting anywhere. And if you think about a young lady who believes her mother wears my shoes, well, that young lady isn't going to go near my shoes. And that was an issue. And I didn't have another 5 years to figure out how to solve that one. I had to do it immediately. I had to create an additional attitude in our company, not change the attitude, but an additional attitude that would appeal to someone like this kid from Stanford. And I thought, I think if I hire Kate Moss, I'm going to get noticed. Well, she didn't want anything to do with me. I mean, she's doing runway shows for Chanel, Saint Laurent. She is not going back 15 years and model shoes. And I couldn't even get a phone call with her. Her agent was a very good blocker for her. But I was also the CEO of the company, the businessman's, and I used that side of my role. And I recognized that her photographer, who is a businessman, and he wants his daily fee, I'm sure. So if he's got a day free, maybe I could convince him. And I called Mario Testino. Mario Testino was the fashion photographer at the time. And he gave me the same story that her agent did. You think I want to waste my time doing a campaign for shoes? Stuart, I'm doing a Saint Laurent runway show. I'm doing photography for Chanel at Vogue and at InStyle, as well as their fashion show. Now, I think without, being impolite, I have to give him credit for that. He was basically saying, it's below me, look elsewhere. And I played off his ego. I really played off his ego. Sort of the way I did a little bit with Zaha, about why'd you build a museum? Well, art needed a new home. But what about footwear? We're new and modern, but the stores look the same as 50 years ago. So I pointed out to him that if he did a great campaign, boy, would he get noticed. And if he did another campaign for Chanel, I said, by the way, how many have you done for them? He said, this will be my 6th. I said, Mario, they're not even going to remember it. It's just another campaign to put in your album. But if you do something in footwear that shakes up our industry, can you imagine how jealous Bruce Weber will be? Well, for those of you who don't know who Bruce Weber was or is, he was the direct competitor of Testino. And they are not fans of each other. Of course, I knew that. And that's what I played off of. And he said, all right. I like your idea. It's a good idea, but I have to control it. Well, of course, I went to him so that he could control it. And he said, I'm gonna control it because my brand is as important to me as yours. I said, what do you have in mind? You have maybe thinking about a model? He said, oh yeah, there's only one. So, my heart is pounding, right? Until he said, it's got to be Kate Moss. And that's how I got Kate Moss. And then he he added to it, you get lucky, He added to it. He said, listen, I'm not going to just do beautiful photography. Oh, you're going to have beautiful photography. He said, but I'm going to do a great video. I said, gee, Mr. Testino, I didn't realize you do videos. I don't, but I have a good friend who does, and he owes me a favor and he'll do our video. Who's that? James Franco. So from nowhere, this little shoe guy in an industry that would never even dream of using people like Testino and Franco has both of them lined up for the next campaign. And that's how I solved my problem. And we became super cool and super hot. And I will also add, and I'm sure Wendy will tell you this too, that if you have somebody within your team that is inspirational, and I can tell you Kate Moss was inspirational, you will create something that you wouldn't have been able to even think about without someone like her. And I had no shoes to put on her. That lady, that kid from the wedding, she was right. I had nothing to put on her. It would not have looked like Kate Moss. So we recreated an additional look in the collection. And it changed the shoe industry forever. This was 12, 14 years ago. The two boots that I created to put on Kate are still the two biggest selling boots in the shoe business. There are over 200 copies. Fortunately, people like the original. And Kate inspired me to come up with that. So it wasn't just hiring Kate, paying her a ton of money to look pretty in ads. It was hiring Kate, oh boy, now I better come up with something that she's going to love. And that pushed me to do it. That's how I solved my problem.
Amazing, amazing. Let me, so we do have some questions starting to come in from the audience, and I want to combine maybe two of them, one that's in the chat, that's come up in the chat, and one in the Q&A that are from, I believe, maybe, that might be directed toward younger alumni, and I'll do it in two parts here. I'll start with you, Wendy. In growing your practice, have you've done design competitions and gone out and won those? And how would you recommend that to sort of young practitioners, people kind of starting out, and your success with that? What would you attribute that to?
I would say that there's virtually no project that comes that doesn't require some sort of competition. So whether or not it's an open competition or something more restrained, we're always competing for work. And I like to compete for work. I like that, that connection to the client. I like that idea that they know how much you really want something in the best world, and how you listen to them and how you think about their problem. I would say with competitions, the most important thing is to always be true to yourself and do the best possible design, not worrying so much about winning, because in a way, if you win, great, whatever you wind up doing is going to be the competition entry anyway. So you might as well always think about what is it that you're learning from the process and exploring as a designer. What is it that you have to hold very, very true to yourself when you do a competition? And I'd say that, like, some of my recent losing competitions have been tremendously successful for me, and I actually use those ideas because they were losing, so they still belong to me. I use those ideas frequently. I use the images of those competitions frequently because they embody the best of my aspirations. So it is a place to investigate. And I would say, please do competitions, as many as you can. It's a great idea.
That's great advice, Wendy, because it's like everything is a competition basically, and in this business, and even when you lose out, there's still, I can think of times in my own practice when we've lost out, but those things come back around, or other opportunities come from them. If you could easily just throw it on the shelf and walk away, but there's still a lot of opportunity there if you had belief or faith in what you were doing. And so turn this also then for Stuart. There's a question here about finding funding as a startup or as a young business, and trying to get on people's radar. I believe this designer's talking about actually wearing prototypes and walking around, and being stopped all the time and asked about their sneakers that they're wearing that are their own design. So how do you, for young designers out there, how do you find that? They're asking, how do you find that funding? How do you find how do you build that business? How do you get that recognition? How do you get that notice from people?
Well, I say this in all of my talks, that it's a shame if you have to take in silent partners, because it's going to gnaw on you to pay someone a part of your profits who isn't doing any work for you. That was my inclination when I started Stuart Weitzman, and I would, looking back, that is exactly what I would do again. I started very small and very slow. I worked elsewhere first in order to accumulate some money to help me get started. And then I used my knowledge of financing and my salesmanship to figure out how to buy shoes, sell them to people who would pay me in 30 days, make arrangements with suppliers who would accept 90 days, and then I would pay them off, having received the money already from my customers. Now, that allowed for very little growth at the beginning, but it was all mine. And I'll tell you something. When you're dealing with your own money, you are more careful with it than when you're dealing with someone else's.
Yeah.
And I encourage everyone else to try to do that. Because, deals seem good when they're not worth anything. But then as it gets better, you'll be surprised how the understandings of investors change. And I never wanted to be subject to that. So I always did it on my own. I never even went to a bank. I didn't want anything to do with that. And I got the suppliers to roll with me. And they did, and I paid them right away. And then they kept doing it, and they on the terms that they set. And we were able to keep going. And that meant that I couldn't sell a lot of little shoe stores. I had to sell Bloomingdale's and Saks and Macy's and Dillard's and those kind of stores who would pay me that quickly and have a cash flow. Whereas independents often required being carried for 2, 3, 4 months. And it wasn't until I was rolling that I was able to go after that second market as well.
There's another question, Stuart, that's that was asking how has your Jewish faith inspired or contributed to your design and business success?
I don't think that the fact that I'm very, very proud of my Jewish heritage had anything to do with why I was able to create good product and run a good company. I don't think so. It's just a wonderful part of my life, and I enjoy it. And I guess if there are a lot of things in your life that give you pleasure, well, then maybe you run your life in a better way. So in that sense, perhaps.
Wendy, would you like to? something on that?
Not on that, but I
Okay.
would like to jump in on
Sure.
a little bit of what Stuart's saying about doing things that you're passionate about and you're learning. And I think that now that we're living in these incredible times, we're all at home and Zooming and not making the connections that we need to, it's been incredibly difficult. I mean, there's been a lot of, frankly, you know, in our industry of architecture, financial ruin. There's been a lot of social injustice. There's been, of course, a lot of death and very, very hard times. And for me, I think in terms of the architectural practice part of it, we had already shifted a lot of our energies towards social justice, but even more so now, taking a kind of activist role with institutions, especially, that we start thinking about how to embrace our community. Nobody really knows what'll happen going forward, what the lasting impact of all of this is, but we should be more focused than ever that when we come together, and we will, when we come together, what that means, and about social bonding, and about sort of what it means to be kind of adjacent and to touch each other as a way to kind of heal and learn, and most of all, as Sue says, to enjoy life together. And so this is, I think that we have to sort of embrace the moment, and we have to use it. We have to kind of build on it and not forget, and keep driving forward. And that's I think where I'm looking right now, is that the connection to a more equitable place in the future. I just wanted to mention.
Wendy, yeah, thank you for saying that. And also, it's funny because this has become pretty normal for 2020. So sometimes the strangeness of we're here on these screens, sort of talking to one another, not hugging one another, not shaking hands, not having lunch, not talking, not catching up in a real, like a face-to-face way that, you know, I know I've built relationships, personal and business, just by that, you know, I want to get to know you, I want to meet you, you know, kind of thing. And how important that is, and how that's now changed in a way that, can we go back? You know, but it's the reality that we have in the moment, but we do have to recognize it, I think. Stuart, is there, we're sort of running out of time here. We're past 1 o'clock. We don't want to hold people. Anything you would like to close with, to sort of add to the conversation?
Well, I think I'd, with all the gloom and doom, you know, we read every day and hear about, how about if I give you some good news?
Good.
Great, please.
Okay. So the largest market for Stuart Weitzman, even at the time I sold the company, you know, had the company sold, right, to Coach, was China. Second to USA. It's now bigger than USA. About 60 plus stores and growing. And here's the good news. We were aware that they've pretty much solved their COVID problem. And in the big cities, our partner, who owned the license for Weitzman, she's still running the stores, even though she sold out when I did. She told me that in August, she did about 80% of the business that she did last year. I know of no retailer that's done even half. In September, it grew to 90%. And in October and November, she met last year's figures. And she explained to me that the Chinese citizens wear masks. They've been wearing them for 15, 20 years. Goes back to the previous SARS and all. sort of an Asian culture. You know, we brush our teeth, they put a mask on. And it makes everyone feel at ease to live their life. And I tell this to retailers because they are probably 6 months ahead of the USA and Europe on living with this virus. There are a million reasons why they conquered it, but that's not the point. The point is that when you get there, it certainly seems that the consumer puts it behind them. Now, I will tell you, her business is different. And this was news to me. She used to do 90% of the retail store's sales in the store. Now she does 30% of the retail store's sales in the store, and 70% her in-store salespeople chase social media, TikTok and all the rest of them, and find customers and sell them shoes from the store. This is not a website. These are salespeople in the store doing business nationally in China, but using the store's inventory and the store's salespeople who've been retrained on how to sell online. And our ex-partner, you know, who built it, is absolutely convinced it isn't going back to the other way. So there's business to be had. Got to adapt to the best approach to it. And I think what she did is a great example that it's not all gloom and doom, honestly.
Yeah, adapt and move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there are those stores that don't know how to train their sales staff to go to TikTok and all the others. They're not going to do any business. But those that do will do more than they did before. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you both, Wendy Evans Joseph, Stuart Weitzman, for joining us today. Thanks for all of you for attending. I know we ran a little over, but thank you for hanging in there, and really thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And thanks for today's talk, and we'll see you all soon.
And thank you, Mark.
Hopefully in person. Hopefully in person. But
yeah.
All right.
That would be nice. Okay.
Great. Thank you.